In the final episode of my story about cruising in Alaska with American Cruise Lines, we visit the city of Petersburg, where some very talented musicians come aboard. After that, we're in the city of Wrangell, where commercial fishing is the main driver of the local economy. Plus, you'll see one of the most exciting parts of the whole trip for me, a thrilling high-speed jet boat ride up a river on the way to view a glacier. One of the highlights of the trip. When we left off in the previous episode, we were flying kites from the deck of our cruise ship. If you missed that episode, there should be a link to it up at the top of the screen. Now here's our ship, American Constitution, and you can barely see Petersburg in the distance. Here's a little better look at Petersburg. This is the marina where our ship was docked, and as my drone works its way to the left, you're going to see our sister ship, American Constellation. She was docked here in Petersburg too, but just for a short time before sailing away. Here's a shot looking in the other direction. This one gives you a good look at downtown Petersburg, as well as those beautiful snow-covered mountains in the background. I'm a licensed commercial drone pilot, and when I fly the drone, I'm legally required to have a visual observer helping me, a second set of eyes looking out for things like other aircraft, power lines, trees, or any other things I need to not crash into. On this particular day, my new friend Janet volunteered to be my visual observer. And during the cruise, lots of other passengers helped me too. One very memorable sight while we were docked in Petersburg was a pair of stellar sea lions that were hanging out right next to our ship. There were two of them, and one had some kind of unusual growth on his head. I think it may have been a cyst or something like that. He seemed to be getting along perfectly well, though, and it was a lot of fun to watch him eating because sea lions have a very unusual way of eating fish. It looks like they're playing with their food, but it's just that they can't chew their food like humans do, so instead they use their teeth to grip their prey and then rapidly shake and flip their heads to tear it into smaller, more manageable pieces that they can swallow. This behavior allows sea lions to efficiently consume prey that may be too large to swallow whole. That evening, we had a musical treat. This is Logan, a very talented musician that performed for us during the entire cruise. But this evening, he was joined by Paul Ward, a musician from the nearby town of Wrangell, as well as young Cooper on percussion. And the three of them sounded great together. But the music is all copyrighted, so unfortunately I can't share the actual songs that they played here on YouTube. The next day, I got to see a little more of Petersburg during an excursion. We started at this very rustic park known as Outlook Park, where sometimes from this spot right here, you can spot whales just offshore. This is all part of the Sandy Beach Recreation Area. And if you look at the right side of the screen, that right there is what passes as a sandy beach in Alaska. Our local bus driver was very friendly and knowledgeable, and I especially liked it when she took us to see this little fish ladder that had been built to help the salmon swim up this tricky part of a creek. The weather turned gray today after an amazing string of sunny days up until this point. No rain though, so it really didn't matter at all. I had come to Alaska prepared for any weather, and we certainly ended up with much better weather than I had expected. The next day, another cloudy one, as our ship headed from Petersburg to the nearby town of Wrangell. This was the view from my drone as we made our approach into Wrangell. You can again see our sister ship waiting for us up ahead. Both ships were doing the same itinerary, just one day apart, so on quite a few days, we would see her as we came into a new town, and then she would leave later that day or early the next morning. The commercial fishing industry is a very big deal here in Wrangell. It's the largest industry in this area. Logging and tourism are others, but fishing is the big one. And I got really lucky in the timing of this drone flight. I caught something really interesting here. I'm going to speed this up a little bit to save time. They have a very modern boat repair facility with two very large mobile cranes that can easily get fishing boats in and out of the water. If you think about the history of ships and boats over the last 6 centuries or so, cranes like this are a pretty great recent development. And it's very cool for a place like Wrangell, with a population of only about 2,000 people, to have something like this. That afternoon, after a nice lunch aboard the ship, I got to go on one of the best excursions of the entire trip. This was a jet boat excursion that picked us up right at the dock in Wrangell where our ship was tied up, and took us across what's known as the Zimovia Strait, where we then entered the Stikine River, which will eventually take us all the way up to a big glacier known as Shakes Glacier. But you know the old expression, getting there is half the fun? Well, in this case, it actually may have been way more than half. After a very thrilling high-speed jet boat ride up the river, we made it to Shakes Glacier. John Muir experienced this part of Alaska in 1879 and described the Stikine River Valley as a Yosemite 100 miles long. In this shot, as we approached Shakes Glacier, I could absolutely see what he meant. It really does look like Yosemite to me. After spending some time admiring the glacier, we started the trip back down the river to get us back to our ship. And there was one more spot that struck me as very Yosemite-like. How's that for a beautiful view? I want to give a huge shout out to Julie, a great passenger I met on this trip, for making it possible for me to go on this jet boat excursion. It was completely sold out, and Julie let me have her ticket so I could get this excursion on video for people like you to see. I mentioned earlier that when we were in Petersburg, the entertainer who had been performing for us throughout the cruise was joined by Paul Ward, a super talented local entertainer. Well, tonight the band got even bigger. A very musical family that lives in Wrangell, the Powers family, added their talent to the mix, and it was a real treat to listen to. I wish I could share the audio with you, but that's a problem on YouTube as all the songs are copyrighted. The next day, our second day in Wrangell, I went on an excursion that took me to a place in Wrangell that surprised me for a town of this size. It's a remarkably good museum that they have in Wrangell. It also acts as a convention center and a theater for the locals. It was interesting to look through the museum's various exhibits and learn some things about Wrangell's history. The same excursion that took me to the Wrangell Museum also brought me out to this beach where we got a close look at petroglyphs, ancient artistic expressions carved into the rocks by the native people about 8,000 years ago. At least 40 petroglyphs have been found at this site. That brings us to the last full day of the cruise, and it was another very scenic one. Although it started out a bit foggy in the morning, as you can see in this time-lapse video I shot, as we sailed up a 30-mile-long fjord known as Endicott Arm. When we get to the end of Endicott Arm, we'll be very near the border with Canada, and we'll get a look at a massive active glacier known as Dawes Glacier. But once again, getting there was half the fun. Along the way, I was impressed with lots more very Yosemite-like views. We saw lots of beautiful waterfalls, both big and small. I also saw an old friend who was coming back from visiting Dawes Glacier, just as we were heading in. It's Celebrity Solstice, a ship that my wife and I sailed on in 2023. As we made our way up Endicott Arm, it was obvious that Dawes Glacier is advancing, not retreating. In other words, it has a lot of forward motion. And that is obvious by the large amount of ice flowing down Endicott Arm after breaking off from the glacier at the point where it meets the water. There was blue ice, white ice, and the coolest part was that some of those pieces of ice had wildlife on them. And since these were floating right by our ship as we sailed up Endicott Arm, it was very easy for everybody to get good photos and videos of them, not just the pros like me with the big lenses, but all the passengers armed with nothing more than cell phones. Now, unfortunately, when we finally got close enough to Dawes Glacier to get a look at it, there was so much ice in the water that it just wouldn't be safe for our ship to go in any closer. At some points in the year, there's a lot less ice in the water than this, and ships like ours can get really close to the glacier, close enough to really see the ice when it breaks off and falls in the water, but not today. It's up to the captain to keep us safe, and his decision was that with this much ice in the water, this would be as close as he could safely get us, and I was totally fine with that. The crew had a very fun activity for us to enjoy today while we were all out on deck enjoying the scenery. There was coffee, hot chocolate, and all sorts of liquor to mix in to help you stay warm. And just in case you don't know, there's never an extra charge for liquor on American cruise lines. It's all included. Were you aware of that? Okay, let me ask you this. Do you need a passport for an Alaska cruise with American Cruise Lines? And one more. Does the ship provide laundry services for passengers? And if so, what does it cost? The reason I ask is because if you don't know the answers to those questions, you might want to book your cruise through a travel agent that really knows American Cruise Lines. Let me suggest that you use mine. She's really good. Caitlin Gallagher, not just an agent, but the owner of Ambrin Travel. That evening, our ship made its way back to where we had departed 9 days ago, Auk Bay in Juneau. As we look at this drone shot of our ship heading into Auk Bay, I should mention that regular passengers aren't allowed to fly a drone off of the ship. I'm only allowed to do so because American Cruise Lines brings me aboard specifically to get shots like this, which they use in their marketing. I also shoot still photos in addition to all the videos you see here on my YouTube channel. My still photos end up in ACL's brochures quite often, and it's a special treat for me when one gets used as a brochure cover photo, which has happened several times. So let me take this opportunity to give you a quick look at some of the best still photos that I shot during this cruise. before I wrap this story up, let me tell you why you should do an Alaska cruise on one of these small ACL ships rather than on one of those mega cruise ships from the big cruise lines. First off, the intimate atmosphere aboard. There were only 130 passengers on the ship this week, compared to thousands on the big cruise ships. And not only is that great because there's less crowding, but also because of the opportunity to really get to know the other passengers. I made so many new friends on this cruise, people I'm still in touch with, even though the cruise is long over now. The big mega ships are so impersonal. Small ship cruising is just the complete opposite of that. You really get to connect with the other passengers if you want to. Another key benefit of doing an Alaska cruise with American Cruise Lines is the ability to access remote, less traveled parts of Alaska that the larger cruise ships can't reach. For example, our ship was able to dock within walking distance of downtown Sitka, where the big cruise ships have to dock so far out of town that it's a 12-minute bus ride in each direction from the ship to downtown, and probably more than 30 minutes considering the time it takes to load and unload everyone from those buses. Our ship was also able to take scenic routes on waterways that are just too shallow for the big ships. Like this route we took from Petersburg to Wrangell on a waterway known as the Wrangell Narrows. At times, the water here was only about 25 feet deep. Additionally, the onboard experience on American Cruise Lines is focused on the destination, with an emphasis on education and exploration, rather than on nightlife or casinos, expensive spa treatments, and gift shops. There's a reason that these videos I make are focused on where we went, what I saw there, and what I did there. That's the big focus of a cruise on American Cruise Lines, my favorite way to explore the United States. And with that, I'm going to conclude this particular video, but this is definitely not going to be my last cruise with American Cruise Lines. In fact, I have another one booked for later this year. This was the fourth in a series of 4 videos about my Alaska cruise. If you haven't seen all 4 parts of the story, I'm going to give you clickable links to the other 3 on the screen in just a moment here. In the upper left, the link to episode 1, a very good place to start. And in the lower left, if you click on that icon of my face, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is free, by the way. I'm Jim Zim. Thanks for watching.